In our preceding show, I said that free enterprise is the law of the jungle. But it has been explained to us that we are not living in a messy jungle, but under the perfect economic system of democratic capitalism. In democratic capitalism, the word democratic is reassuring and appealing. How could, in fact, an economic system not to be democratic in a country which is heralded by its main representative as the greatest democracy in the world? Propagandists know very well that you repeat something long enough, the people will finally believe in, so that we believe that we are living in the greatest democracy in the world. The problem is that it is not for sure when you talk about reality, it is not for sure that we are even in a real democracy. Democracy is an ideal, which, as any other ideal, will never be completely attained. There is democracy when all the individuals who constitute a given society are able to think without any external restrictions, can make conscious decisions or choices, can assume the responsibility for the ensuing consequences of their choice, and have the possibility of free representation. Freedom of speech and opinion, given that it were happening, is the only exterior manifestation of democracy. But it is the part that allows politicians to say that we are in a great in the greatest democracy in the world. There are, by the way, a lot of other countries where you can say what you want to whom you want with absolutely no fear, even telling the president that he is a stupid warrior. George Bernard Shaw said once, British, English, and Americans are brothers separated by the same language. We can transpose and say that Republicans and Democrats are brothers, separated by the same politics.
The two-party system is surely the greatest foe of democracy in the contemporary republic. Two parties cannot fairly represent the spectrum of ideas and ideals espoused by the citizenry. Are there but two sides to every issue before the legislature? Even if, in a simplistic world, there were only two alternatives for addressing every problem, how can two parties speak simultaneously of one side or another on an infinite number of controversies? The two-party system actually thwarts the cogent presentation of all the alternatives for society. The two-party system gives the impression that there exists representative government because voters select legislators and a chief executive. However, this is pure chimera, as the party machinery actually controls who is put up for election. As Boss Tweed of New York said in the 19th century, Let the people select their leaders so long as I select the candidates.
In other words, at the exception of a few inner conflicts that would make us believe that they represent the two sides of the spectrum, Democrats and Republicans, as alternative understudies of each other, follow the same politics, the same economic politics which leads the country where it is today, close to disaster, from the most productive country in the world to the less productive country in the world. As John Blaymeyer allows us to understand, the two-party systems camouflage divergence, if not unconciliable interest. The job of the president is to try to find conciliation between those interests. Thus, it creates hard-working committees coached by hard-working staff of non-elected persons, people, same people that many times you can find on diverse other committees. Those underground groups or councillors work without the eyes of the general audience, many times without the eyes of the elected members of Senate or of Congress, and they maybe are the real rulers of the country. There cannot be democracy when a two-party system make it in such a way that the existence of a substantial third party is practically impossible. The two-party system acts like a dictatorship that does not admit opposition. Thus, the American democracy has no moral right to pretend that it is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. In the meantime, the poor members of Congress are subjected to an intense pressure by lobbying groups advocating for very various interests. The result is that the interest of those various groups make that small problems become more important than the issues concerning the whole planet. America is on its way to disintegration. Not especially because it is involved in too many military activities, because it still has the most powerful army in the world and is not out of money, because when out of money it can always borrow for some money. But the real reason, as may be said by the fishermen in Naples, in Italy, who knows very well what they are talking about when they say the fish rots first by the head. It is public domain to know that most of the most important political figures in our country are linked directly or indirectly to the big corporation or to what General President Eisenhower defined as the military-industrial complex. No name, please, if you don't want to end up in jail. Because it must be said in our greatest democracy that we have been directly incited by the highest authority in the government to denounce our neighbors if we suppose that they are involved in some mysterious activities. Such was it with the Council of the Ten in Venice, the Inquisition, or more recently with Mussolini fascism or Hitler Nazism. Modern technology improves the process. They can film you in the street with invisible camera of whatever police. They can hear you making love in your bedroom. They can know everything, absolutely everything about you. Slowly but surely, the greatest democracy in the world is slipping into the condition of a police state. They pretend that it is done, of course, for your own good in the name of your security. However, our country, which is enormous military standing, is still unable to put an end to terrorism. Terrorism is a problem that will not be solved by those means, because the primordial question cannot find an answer if it is not asked. Why terrorism? Let's imagine that we are a dozen people invited for a dinner. The dinner is served. You will notice that 4 or 5 plates are completely empty. But our host congratulates us for being there and start to talk, to explain that he is the strongest, the smartest, the richest, the more religious, the more this, the more that. And during the whole dinner, he doesn't stop saying that we should imitate his example, that he eventually could push us to imitate him. At the end of the dinner, the, let's say, civilized people, those who have something in their plate, will hate their host. And those who have nothing in their plates, not only they will hate their host, but they will want to kill him. They have nothing to lose except the promise of a better life after life. Besides, it is one thing to say that you will get the terrorists wherever they are and kill them. Another thing is to do it. I may give you, I'm sorry to do it as a personal example, but that sometimes it's very difficult to catch the terrorist. I was labeled terrorist by the German. The German made no distinction between what you could call freedom fighters and terrorists as we know them today. For them, everything that was against them was terrorism. So I was a terrorist, and I have been involved as a member of a British mission in France during World War II in several operations on the ground. One of them, my boss, who was a woman, we had asked for the bombing of a railroad station that the Germans were utilizing very, very much. And during that bombing, 3 bombers were shot down. A few days later, my boss, as I said, asked me to pick up 3 American airmen in a farm south of that town that we had bombed. It was some kind of 40 miles promenade through, of course, not the road, but through fields. And crossing a road, I saw a very small house, but on top of the door was a sign saying "Café." So I thought in myself that in my way back with my 3 Americans, it was in August, very hot, we could eventually stop there, have a little drink, and go further on. So I arrived at the farm, find my 3 Americans, which have been transformed in farmers by the farmer himself, giving them pants and shirts of farmers. They were not anymore military Americans. So I say, now if they are picked up by the Germans, they are not even military people, they are just spies, but nevertheless, we'll do it. And it came through my mind that I should them, they had not a single word of French. And I say, I should teach them how to say yes, oui, and no, no, in French. Oui, no. And I made a repetition, and after a few minutes, they were able to say, like good French people, oui, no. And we take off. And we arrive at the small cafe. Watch out, there was absolutely nothing around, no car, no trucks, no nothing. I said, there is nobody in, let's have a drink and go further. I pushed the door, followed by my 3 Americans. If they were still alive, they would tell you exactly the same story. I pushed the door, the room was full of Germans. We were sitting, smoking, talking at some little round table, and luck was that the only table available was the one close to the door. So I went to the bar, bought a bottle of wine, which was the only drink you could have at that time, some glasses, and with my American, I started to tell the story that I bought a cow the day before, blah, 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 blah. And once in a while, one of them was saying, oh, we, and the other was, no, we, no. And we kept like that for the time to drink quietly a bottle of wine and to live very quietly, not even looking at the Germans, like if we were really 4 guys from around with our cows, farm everything you want. This story demonstrates that for the German, I was supposed to be caught by the German army, reduced like ground meat in meatballs. That was exactly what we say in the leaflets that we found on the German officer. So in the middle of my enemies, I had a very nice bottle of wine with 3 American airmen. You take the conclusion you want out of that story when it is a question to catch the terrorists. But let's go back to the subject of our show of today, democracy. I made allusions to what I consider, or we can consider, as the backstage of our democratic capitalism, the unknown deals by the heads of the democratic fish, on the back, of course, of the general audience. Front stage duplicates backstage. There cannot be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people when public election depends primarily on money, which separates automatically the candidate from the 90% of the country with no consequence or no money at all. Okay. And money eventually flows in the treasure chest of the two-party system. As nothing changes during the centuries, we can ask again to a man for all seasons, Thomas More, what he thought in 1516 of one who can eventually buy his elections. Nor can they understand why a totally useless substance like gold should now, all over the world, be considered far more important than human beings, who gave it value as it has, purely for their own convenience. The result is that a man with about as much mental agility as a lump of lead or a block of wood, a man whose upper stupidity is paralleled only by his immorality, can have a lot of good, intelligent people at his beck and call just because he happens to possess a large pile of gold. But let's back to our democracy. There cannot be real democracy as long as a substantial third party cannot exist, as long as money can buy elections, as long as the Electoral College can make you vote for someone who didn't vote for, as long as members of Congress or senators can make a career out of their function. In other words, re-establishing real democracy requires allowing the creation of political parties by simple declaration of their existence with an end to the privileges reserved for wealthy Republicans and Democrats. Providing a similar capacity of campaigning for all parties under the condition of reaching 5% of the votes. Suppressing the Electoral College, reducing the tenure for senators and members of Congress to 8 years. This is without forgetting the supreme authority of the country, the Supreme Court, we ask for the elimination of the power of the Supreme Court so that it will be replaced by a consultative body whose members will be elected for 8 years only. We are supported by a man no less than the one who wrote the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, who in a letter addressed from Monticello on September 28, 1820, addressed to William Charles Jarvis, wrote, "You seem to consider the judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions. A very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. Our judges are as honest as other men, and not more so. They have, with others, the same passion for party, for power, and the privilege of their corps. Their power is the more dangerous as they are in office for life and not responsible as the other functionaries are to the elective control. The Constitution has erected no such a tribunal, knowing that to whatever hands confined, with the corruption of time and party, its members would become despots. I know no safe deposit of the ultimate powers of the society but the people themselves, and if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power." Jefferson said it all. The circle is closed. Anything else is words in the wind. The key word of democracy is education. It has to be an education that we do not yet provide to everyone, at the exception, maybe, of No Child Left Behind, some kind of a baloney which intends to make us believe, in a country of make-believe, that every child has an education. Education is a problem that we will address in coming shows. What I can say today is that every elected person at any level who do not support providing everyone with free education and restricts the budget allowed to schools is guilty of undermining democracy at its roots.
The art of politics will become easier and easier with the American of the future. After the failure of education and long exposure to brainwashing TV, transforming the citizens into a flock of sheep.
Jump, the president will say.
And they all will jump.
You may remember, if you have watched the first of our shows of this year, that we have already asked Abraham Lincoln for the solution.
This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or their revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it.
This revolutionary right has to be exercised by parliamentary ways. It necessitates the creation of a political force strong enough to achieve this goal. This is the reason why we created Planet, a party for the people, with no membership, no fundraising, Otherwise, with membership and fundraising, we will be the others. You will tell me that it resembles the fight of a small terracotta pot against a huge iron pot. What I am doing today in front of you can be duplicated all over the country. And there is something that no money in the world can buy. This is the word of mouth. The word of mouth is still alive between people, or can be duplicated exponentially by email. There are also millions of copiers that can reproduce the leaflets, the flyers of Planet. T-shirts with the Planet Rose or sticker for your car are up to your imagination. At a more political level, Planet supporters can start to move the country by running for any election, as unrewarding can be the function, but as a means to promote Planet. But this is another story.